Hello everyone, and welcome to your EDUC 4030 lesson planning video. So we as an education team have talked about lesson planning for your particular practicum, and so I'm going to share all of our thoughts with you. So here we go. So weeks 1 through 5, when you are at 25%, 50%, and 75%, we want you to create complete lesson plans for all lessons. We do want them to be uploaded by Sunday night, and we want you to use what we are calling a comprehensive approach. So what do we mean by a comprehensive approach? I'm actually going to use a bit of a Google Map analogy that Carolyn Freeman and I talked about, and I think it will work perfectly here to illuminate what we are expecting from a comprehensive approach. So for lesson plans in weeks 1 through 5, we want you to use this approach, this comprehensive approach. So to put it in a Google Maps analogy, a comprehensive approach is what you use when you are really unfamiliar with the area that you are in, and you will surely get lost if you don't have the support of the spoken directions, the actual blue line, the visual blue line, and the written out directions. And all of these together become absolutely useful and essential tools to get you to your destination. So in thinking about this in lesson planning talk, for weeks 1 through 5, we want you to use this lesson plan template that you are very familiar with, and we want you to fill in all parts in a really comprehensive manner with all the detail. So similar to what you have been doing for your education classes and your assignments in your coursework. However, in weeks 6 through 12, it becomes a little bit, potentially a little bit different. So we still want you to create complete lessons that should include, again, all parts of a lesson plan. So we still want you to be considering those hooks: differentiation, accommodation, transitions, lesson plan analysis. However, we want you to think about crisping up your efficiency. We want you to start to write down what you need while still showing us that you understand each part. So don't get rid of the hooks, the transitions, and don't write down what you don't need to write down. So if you know the rules of a game inside and out and you will not mess them up, don't write them all down. However, if you're introducing a new game and it could potentially ruin the game if you don't get all the rules written, or if you don't say all the rules correctly, then write the rules down so that you don't mess them up, and then thus destroying or sidetracking your own lesson. So every one of you will need something different in your planning, right? Because of who you are, your background, your personality, and you need to start to make those decisions as students and future teachers. So however, we still want you to, as I say, spin the movie reel. So you still need to give enough detail in your plan so that we can picture and follow the lesson plan. So again, spin that movie reel. So let's talk about, let's go back to the Google Map analogy, and let's talk about what could these lesson plans potentially look like in weeks 6 through 12. So we're calling this the guided lesson planning. So back to the Google Map analogy, you can use, when you're trying to get somewhere, you can use the blue line visual and the written directions when you're not absolutely certain of the area and how you're going to get to your destination. However, you are familiar with the area and have a good sense of where you're going. So you need a little bit of detail, but maybe not as much detail as those areas where you have no clue where you're going. So in a guided lesson plan, we want you to complete all aspects of the lesson plan, but maybe you, again, don't have to write out every step of every cooperative learning strategy if you know it. However, if you need to write out the steps so that your lesson doesn't go sideways, absolutely. You still do that. But now you're starting to make those decisions from a place of confidence and a place of knowledge. Okay. Final Google Maps analogy. Yeah, Carolyn and I had fun in the hallway talking about this. So these are directions, that you use when you are really actually quite familiar with the area, but just need some general guidance. It's just like, oh, I got to turn here. Oh yeah, I got to go over the bridge, that kind of thing, to get to your destination. So to connect to lesson planning, then, if you know the content and your pedagogical choices really well. So for instance, if you know how to read musical notation, you don't have to write out everything. This is an A, this is a C, this is a D. You know that content, as well as maybe your pedagogical choices, such as cooperative learning strategy. You can now start to write out, I'm going to do a think, pair, share. You don't have to say, okay, I'm going to tell the students to stand up. We will now start to trust that you know how to actually execute that in class. And then you only write down in your lesson plan, in an express lesson planning outline, is you write down what you need. Okay, so again, you need to be filling in all the parts of lesson plan for all three, for comprehensive, for guided, and for express planning. If you write down the important parts of the lesson, we will still be able to ascertain the flow of the lesson. Okay, so as long as we can, in our minds, spin the movie reel and see the plan. If you have things like introduce, or students will do activity, we're still going to call you on that and be like, okay, what does introduce mean? What does do activity mean? You've got to have enough so that we can actually picture what the kids are doing. So in particularly weeks 6 through 12, you probably will move back and forth between express, guided, and comprehensive planning. And that is really transitioning you into the reality of classroom lesson planning. There are going to be plans that your teacher may write out many more steps than normal, because it's a new content area, or it's a new pedagogical choice. Other times, when he or she is very confident in the content or the pedagogical choices, you will see a very, very lean express lesson plan. Okay, so in weeks 6 to 12, the decision on how you will fill out the lesson plan template is dependent on analysis and consensus from you, your teacher, and your faculty supervisor. So it's dependent on how the actual lessons are going. So if you are choosing an express lesson planning or an express lesson plan, and your lesson plans are not actually going well in the classroom, then your mentor teacher and your faculty supervisor will probably say, hey, you need to go back to comprehensive lesson planning, get your confidence up, get some more skills, and then you can go back. So it's going to be an ebb and flow, and it's not going to be just dependent on one or the other, you, your faculty supervisor, or your teacher. It's going to be dependent on all three, and really on how the lessons are going. So again, if you think, yeah, I'm express planning, man, starting week 6, I'm express planning, be ready maybe to be called on that, and to say, hey, you need to go back to guided. I need a little bit more detail, or I need you to go all the way back to comprehensive, because I need to know that you understand these concepts. And don't see it as a punishment. Absolutely not. It's absolutely, we want your lesson planning skills to be so solid by the end of this 4th year practicum that you then can go into sort of really any lesson planning avenue and knock it out of the park in your lesson. Okay, so however, no matter what lesson plan avenue you choose, you always need to know where you are going and how you're going to get there. So continue to spend time on your outcomes and the how will I know students have achieved the learning outcomes section, because your learning opportunities have to move you to those learning objectives, and your learning opportunities have to be what you actually need to teach in order to fulfill the objectives. So your route has to lead you to your destination, but ultimately, if you don't know where you're going, if you're trying to get to MHC and you end up at the University of Calgary, it's not a bad place to be, but it's not where you are headed, right? So you have to know where you're going in order, and your learning opportunities have to get you to that destination. Okay, here we go. Now let's look at some specifics of planning. So Uniplans. We want you to have a unit plan developed before you start lesson planning. Your unit plan will actually be a huge relief for you, because you will basically have the outline of all your lessons done, and you can see, oh, I haven't used any cooperative learning strategies. Oh, I haven't actually had them do any writing. I haven't actually had them been doing any reading. You can look and you can ascertain what you need to change. If you're just pinging off lessons without the overarching guidance of Uniplan, you're going to feel frantic. So use your Uniplans, as it just takes a burden off your shoulders. These Uniplans should be 2 to 3 pages. Yes, Spencer, 2 to 3 pages, right? You want these, just list the activities with the context. So I'm going to do a mini lesson, and I have a PowerPoint, and I'm going to go through slides 1 through 12 of the PowerPoint for the mini lesson. I'm going to use Think, Pair, Share, cooperative learning strategy. I'm going to incorporate math by self. I'm going to do a class consolidation on Jamboard. That's all you have to put in your Uniplan. Then your lesson plan. Then you get into all of the minutia and the details. Again, we should be able to picture what's going to happen over that week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks from your Uniplan. We should be able to picture pretty clearly how you're going to navigate through that lesson. Okay, submitting complete lesson plans. So when it at 100%, so weeks 6 through 12, please complete lesson plans 2 to 3 days. Submit complete lesson plans 2 to 3 days ahead. So what will we be looking for? If it's, say for example, it's Tuesday, we should be able to go on to the platform where you've submitted lesson plans, and we should be able to see Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Because we understand that things might change, things might shift around, that 2 to 3 days is pretty realistic as far as probably how far your teacher is actually ahead in specific lesson plans as well. Okay, so that's the deal with weeks 6 through 12. Where to upload lessons and Uniplans? We need you to ask your faculty supervisors, and each will work within a system that is the best educational option for both of you. So just check in with your faculty supervisor and follow the guidance of your faculty supervisor. Okay, how to actually use complete lesson plans in the classroom. So we know that complete lesson plans are usually, multiple. It could be 2 or 3 pages. Sometimes there's a lot of text, and sometimes we found that pre-service teachers get lost in the lesson plan. So we want you to start individually. What is the best way to use your lesson plan when teaching? So do you have a little skeletal list at the top of your lesson plan with, okay, hook, I'm going to have 2 stuffed animals and I'm going to rotate them around, and the kids are going to be like, what are you doing? Then I'm going to do a little mini lesson on the rotation of the earth around the sun. Then I'm going to do a cooperative learning strategy. So you just have the skeleton at the top of your complete lesson plan. So if you need the complete lesson plan, it's there, but you don't necessarily flipping through it. Do you want to have Google Slides to keep you on track so that you know what's happening? That's fine. Do you want it in some kind of digital format so that, again, you can just have your computer open and you can see what's coming? We've seen students actually good old highlighter in their complete lesson plan that they highlight so that they can see what's coming up. That will be your choice. And we want you to by the end of the practicum, have a system for how you're going to actually use these complete lesson plans in your practicum when you're actually teaching. Okay, there was a question I know about calendar time, dear actual DPA, not your phys ed time. This was Jason's, Jason's hill to die on. Actual DPA, if it's an actual phys ed lesson, you need a lesson plan. But if it's actual DPA, it can be linked into what I'm about to say. Or things like routine time, circle, those kind of things. So how do you plan for these times? We do want you to link to curricular objectives. So if it is, so if you're in a kindergarten class, if your objective is to introduce them to academic school language of things like how to sit properly, how to line up, that you don't push your neighbor, that you put your hand up to ask a question, those are actual curricular objectives. But you need to be linking this time to those curricular objectives. We want you to consider the grade level. So what does a K calendar time look like versus a grade 2 calendar time? because they shouldn't be exactly the same. And they should be aimed at grade 2 curricular objectives. So here is what we are going to charge you with for these particular times. If you can justify to yourself and ultimately to us, you create one plan for the week of calendar time, the month of calendar time, or one lesson for your entire practicum time. So for kindergarten, if the purpose of calendar time for the entire 12 weeks that you are there is to introduce them to academic school language, then you could do one lesson plan for the practicum time. However, we want you to be able to justify that. So if in week 9, we come out and we say, what are you doing during this calendar time? And you're like, I don't know, it's just what we do every morning. That's not going to be cool, right? So this is a little bit where you have a little bit of room to wiggle in there, but know that if we ask you, we need you to be able to justify why you only have one lesson plan for the entire practicum time or the entire month. Okay. Centers. Now, especially like those K to 2, possibly 3, there's lots of center time. So this is how we want you to deal with center time. You can do one lesson per week if you're doing centers on the lesson plan template, sorry. We want you to division of days. So Monday will have its own learning opportunity box. Tuesday will have its own learning opportunity box. Wednesday, Thursday, kind of thing. We want you to fill in the differentiation accommodations for each center, as they will be different, right? If you are doing a very hands-on center versus a writing center, those differentiation accommodations are going to be different. Think about a hook and a possible mini lesson for each day. Like, how are you going to introduce the centers? Generally, you don't just go, okay, go kids, right? So think about how you're going to get them going and what is the purpose of this? What's the purpose of the centers? And then transitions will most likely be the same. So how they move between the centers, but if they're different, note them. Okay. So you don't have to be, what we do want to see though, is that if you're doing a whole week of centers and we go out there on a Thursday and there's a center that the kids are obviously bored with or not getting really anything out of, we might say, why didn't you change that center up? Knowing on Wednesday that the students weren't really learning much from it anymore. So again, it's not just a boom, I'm going to do these centers all week. You still have to be analyzing. And maybe you change one out. Maybe you're like, okay, the water table, not such a good idea with this class. I'm going to change something out for that particular center. Okay, seminars, just FYI, seminars online, they will be online once a week for 45 minutes, and there will be 12 pre-service teachers in each group. So it's we're combining some of the faculty supervisors groups, so you will just be given a link and that will be your group. Seminar date will be determined by your practicum supervisor. There will be a weekly seminar reading. The visitation schedule will again consist of check-ins and observations, very similar to year 3. And like year 3, there are 2 evaluations, a midterm and a final point in there. And these are both MRU and MHC standards for this particular practicum. Okay, so is treating every pre-service teacher exactly the same as treating them equally? So look at, I know that you've seen this standardized test cartoon, and I think that it's apropos for now as well. So for a fair selection, everybody has to write exactly the same lesson plan, no matter what your background, expertise, personality, preference, or comfort level. So I don't think you want us to treat all of you exactly the same, as that is really not meeting you where you are at, nor are we then able to push you to your full potential. So if you are chatting with your colleagues during your practicum, which we hope you do, you may find there are some different actions happening with your colleagues than there are with you. Okay, so trust us. Like Aladdin says to Jasmine, do you trust me? And what does Jasmine say? Yes. Trust in our process that it will look different for each student, for each mentor, for each faculty supervisor. And that's good. This is differentiation at its best, right? So treat the different processes and focus for each of you, because that's what we are ascertaining as professionals that you need at that moment. So trust also that we really are going to push you in your planning skills this practicum, because we know that we at the end of this practicum, we want those planning skills to be just so automatic. Because when you start teaching, there are going to be additional things that are going to be piled on to you as a first year teacher. They're all good things, but you want that lesson planning to be so automatic that you can then tackle all of the other things with enthusiasm and with some energy. So hopefully this clarifies what's going to happen in this final practicum. Enjoy this practicum. It's amazing. It's what you've been looking forward to this whole time. And enjoy and have a great one. Take care. Bye-bye.